Agency, I'm very glad to be moderating this session on such an important topic, which is an absolute priority to achieve success in decarbonization, as it is not only about financing the green, it's also how we transit away and hopefully in a planned and organized manner from emissive assets, and how we support energy utilities in this journey. I have an echo. I don't know if it can be removed, if it was like that for the other panels yesterday. I hear me twice. It was like that. Okay. Thank you. We have already 3 persons on stage who have been waiting. We have 3 persons waiting in the waiting room of Zoom. Hopefully, hopefully they will get connected. And I don't know if we are streamed online, but we'll see. So we have here Henri Weisman, who is senior researcher with the IDRIS Climate Program and director of the Deep Decarbonization Pathway Initiative. We have Romain Poivet, who is now with the World Benchmarking Alliance and the former ADEME fellow, and who has been coordinating the international ACT initiative, standing for Assessing Low Carbon Transition. And we have here on stage Priscilla Jesi, who is senior advisor on funding execution within ESCOM Treasury, ESCOM being the power utility of South Africa. We shall be joined, fingers crossed, online by Benoît Leguet, who is the executive director of the Institute for Climate Economics in Paris, by Cynthia Rosley, who is Director of Finance and Risk Management at PLN, which is the Indonesian power utility, and Nahed Sahab, who must be terribly stressed not to be able to get connected, as she organized everything, Senior Investment Officer at AFD, and who has been very active in, notably in setting up public-private partnership, notably on climate and energy. So with this very diverse panelists, I believe we will have the opportunity to discuss on how to base immediate critical decision for SOE in the framework of a long-term vision. So on and long-term vision and trajectory. So in a way from theory to practice with all of you around the table. If I may, Henri, Romain, I will start with you, not with theory only, but indeed with long-term strategy. Can you present briefly your methodologies and synergies between the DDP and the ACT? And you know that we have to be shorter than we anticipated. So thank you for doing your best to catch up with time.
Thank you very much, Mathilde, and thanks for the invitation. Yeah, indeed, well, I mean, the idea was to get started this conversation with some lessons that we've learned from the collaboration between IDRI and ADEME on this joint project between the Decarbonization Pathway Initiative and the ACT initiative, where basically we've tried to combine the strengths of both. So I will start by sharing just very quickly some insights on what the DDP is and some of the lessons of the project, and let Romain follow up more specifically on what ACT is doing, which is the companies related component. May I have the next slide, please? So very quickly, what is the DDP? Just 3 things. In terms of activities, we are a network of partners developing country-specific long-term pathways. So it's an analysis of the transitions in the country, and we use that, so just as introduced by Mathilde, it's not only a research project, it's a research project that aims at being useful in concrete conversation and policy making. So we use that to facilitate and to help organize some discussion within countries and internationally on the how-to question, the how to transform the economies, and through the collaboration with ACT, how to transform the companies. The approach is in 3 words: country-driven, country-led, country-owned. So it's we provide a method of work. So we have this international community of practice, but all the work we are doing is really driven by the specificities of each country context, and the purpose is just to reflect on these specificities to make sure that the analysis that we are providing is relevant to the specific question as they emerge in the country. And we build on this international network, which is, so it's the map is very small, but in short, we've been working since 2013. We have more than 20 countries covered, and when I say countries, it means that in a country we have at least one local partner. So just in South Africa, because that will be discussed later on, we are working with the University of Cape Town, and in each of the countries we have some local partners who are both renowned researchers, but also very well connected to the policy decision and discussion that they emerge in the country. May I have the next slide, please? So key insight from what we've been doing over the past decade almost. So basically we show that the analysis in all these countries show that carbon neutrality strategies is feasible, it can be done, and it can be done in a way that's consistent with the socio-economic priorities of the country. And maybe that's something that is a critical message on the how-to, because as I mentioned, this message is interesting, is important, but even more important is some messages about how to make it happen. And a few insights from our analysis maybe that can notably be more specifically relevant for companies is, first, delaying action is a dead end. So if you delay action, you are entitled to do more later while being less prepared to do so. So that's not an option. And it's, I mean, if you want to develop some strategies, you rather need to start now, and possibly yesterday, but since it's not possible, let's start now. The second is the how-to is we need, if we want to reach carbon neutrality consistently with development objective, to implement rapid, far-reaching, deep transformation of all sectors. So we are talking about a drastic transformation everywhere in all the sectors, and that's probably critical for the companies because that's the anchor of their reflection is to transform themselves in a context where the whole economy will be transforming. Third message is that if we want to implement this transformation, we need to have country-specific action. So there is no silver bullet that will solve the problem. It's rather a set of policies and action that need to be implemented specifically with the countries. And the last one, probably the most important of all when talking about companies, is that given this set of action and policy packages, we absolutely need coordination of all actors. Yes, national governments have an important role to play, but without good coordination between the governments and other actors, and notably the private sector, the transformation will not happen. So it's only if we manage to organize this coordination that we'll get to the point. Next slide, please. So here, I will not enter into all the details. We don't have time, but just want to mention this work that we've been doing where we combine the lessons from the Deep Decarbonization Pathway Initiative together with the richness of the ACT DDP, which provides a method for assessing the transition plans of the company as a way to guide them for their climate performance. So we've done that. This is a project funded by the FEFEM, the Fonds Français pour l'Environnement Mondial, which has been implemented in Mexico and Brazil as a prototype. And basically, this project has allowed just to test the connection between the two methods and to show the value of developing some assessments of the company's plan that are grounded on the analysis of the sectoral transition of the country that can lead concretely to the transition. So don't want to enter into any of the details. You can find all the information on the website that's indicated below. All information is publicly available. The two institutions are really keen just to favor the replicability. And with that, I will stop, pass the floor to Romain to tell a bit more about the ACT initiative. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks for the invitation. So following your thoughts, so basically the original idea of the ACT initiative, when we launched it at the COP21, was to really focus, to move from the commitments to the concrete actions of companies, and to provide kind of now it's a buzzword, but a climate accountability framework for company, and to provide some methodologies, sectoral methodologies, to assess companies' decarbonization strategies and transition plan. And now, since COP26, it's now obvious that companies' transition plans shall be aligned with a 1.5 pathway. It's a critical need if we want to really be able to assess the company's transition, and if we want to also hold companies accountable for their climate actions, basically. So the good news, as explained by Henry, is that we can always develop ambitious sectoral decarbonization pathways that are adapted to the local context and national context, and we can use those those roadmaps or pathways to then assess companies against those pathways. And what was done with the DDP part and the ACT part of the ACT DDP was really to use the sectoral pathway developed by the DDP team and use those pathway with the ACT methodologies to assess companies in Mexico and Brazil against those pathways. So it's always feasible to assess a company transition pathway against such ambitious transition pathway. And it's also possible to build a company company transition pathway, knowing how the business sector shall transition, basically. But the most important part, especially I think for state-owned companies, is really to investigate more on the investment needs that are needed by a company to, let's say, really transition as fast as possible in a just transition way of thinking as well, to, as you said, when we were talking previously, to leave no one behind in the transition. And I think that especially the state-owned companies should be seen as a lab for governments and for countries, should be seen as a lab or a vitrine, if I can say that, for countries, especially for such state, for key sectors like electric utilities, because we all know that electric utilities is a key sector to decarbonize all the other sectors, especially the industry one, the transportation, the housing as well. So if we take a look on the recent climate and energy benchmark developed by the World Benchmarking Alliance, using the ACT methodologies, we can see that basically the companies from electric utilities have still no good transition plans. So some companies, basically 44 of the 50 companies assessed by the World Benchmarking Alliance with the ACT methodologies, enlighten the fact that those 44 companies has transition plan, but not robust enough, because they half of them basically don't have any financial information. So we don't know, we clearly don't need how a company will invest their capex in the transformation, decarbonization of their fleet of production. So it's also a good news for the MDBs, basically, because they can, knowing the transition plan of a company, they can, let's say, condition their loan, for instance, against a specific decarbonization performance, and basically the ACT methodologies are really fit to provide such support. And yeah, I think we can build on the ACT DDP experience and the ACT experience with transition plan of companies. We can provide lots of information to really encourage and facilitate the transformation of companies, especially state-owned companies.
Thank you. And we see really very clearly how the two methodologies are complementary. I have Priscilla here. I don't think we have yet the people online.
Recording in progress.
Great. Timely. So Priscilla, I think with what was presented right now by Henri and Romain, if I'm not mistaken. So you're from Eskom, the South African power utility. So you are actually practicing and in the middle of a very intense discussion, planning on both technical human resources and financing on what it will mean for ESCOM to go through the turnaround which is behind the just energy transition, which has been decided by the South African government. So we are very honored and pleased to have you here. Can you share yourself your challenges and how you plan to overcome these challenges within ESCOM?
Thank you very much. As introduced, I'm the senior advisor on the funding execution in ESCOM and also the lead on project funding for the JET pipeline. And I'll be sharing the challenges, but not only challenges, but strategies also and opportunities, because where there's a challenge, there's definitely an opportunity. We know that obviously the divestment from the coal, it posed some challenges in terms of access to finance when the financial institutions are divesting. But we know that not just a finance gap, but also an opportunity then to transition. So talking about the transition plans, that talks to the need, of the company, talking about transition plans, that gives that opportunity to move towards the clean energy. So obviously incumbents like ESCOM, which is the SOE in South Africa, had to make a decision in terms of transitioning, and they had also to fit and conform to what the financial institutions are looking for. But the way now South Africa is driving the transition, we've passed the stage of just fitting and conforming. We actually saying that the financial institutions must follow suit, meaning that the financial institutions must also be flexible and reform. We call them to stretch and transform, in terms of how they are supporting the transition, because obviously we need proper structuring, not cherry picking. Proper structuring means that how these are structured, they cater for the decarbonization that is happening, which starts with the decommissioning on our side in terms of the power stations, getting more space for repowering and repurposing, and also now the last portion, which is an important one, the social one, structures that includes also the social, whether it's the reskilling, because we know that the shutting down of the power station poses a risk of loss of revenue and also, unemployment. But that gives us an opportunity to repower and repurpose, not only closing down the power station, repurpose and reskill people to new technologies in terms of the clean technologies. So that is another opportunity. But in terms of also innovation, in terms of technology and infrastructure, we know that there is lack of capacity in terms of the grid access, in terms of the transmission. That is what we are prioritizing also in our funding, that we're prioritizing the grid, because we can have all these technologies, but if we don't have capacity, so it's an issue. So the grid actually unlocks the investment for those technologies. So, and lastly, what is important is also to bring is that the climate finance plays an important role, but alone it's not sufficient to cater for the financing of the energy transition, because obviously it's restrictive, it's funding green, and countries like South Africa, we are on the journey to green. So appropriate funding mechanisms, like also the transition finance, to form part of the blended finance, so that the transition activities are also funded. So the blended finance solution is the better solution for funding the energy transition, where the DFIs, the development institutions, we sort of crowd in the private sector, because if you're looking at our jet pipeline, in terms of the amount, you see, we can't do with, you know, the DFI funding alone. We need to crowd in the private sector, and we're also looking at private, you know, sector participation, where we collaborate and partner, because obviously of fiscal constraints, we can't do everything on balance sheet. So now we're looking at partnering, and it's an exciting, you know, opportunity. Thank you.
I think okay, thank you. Maybe, so I don't think we have our three panelists online. Then they are online? Right now? Oh my God. um, hello, we started without you. We really apologize for the technicalities this morning. Welcome. We already heard from IDRI and ACT the complementarity of the two methodology, one setting up the long-term trajectory, and ACT being able also to assess the utilities target and roadmaps toward these long-term trajectories. I'm trying to summarize now. We heard Priscilla from ESCOM sharing views and experience on South Africa. The challenge is, of course, to come away from coal and a call to us, to financial institutions, which I noticed, to learn to finance the transition and move away from only financing new green assets, if I summarize also and simplify most probably your message. Cynthia, I'm Cynthia Rosley. I introduced you already. I introduced the three of you in advance. Cynthia Rosley, thank you very much for joining us. After this share of experience from South Africa, we would be also, of course, very interested to have your views from Indonesia and from these major power utilities, which is PLN. The same on your, at the same time, challenges and strategies to overcome the barrier to the just energy transition. Cynthia, please.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Sorry for late joining. We have been waiting for quite some time, so probably not catching up what was the message that has been conveyed. But actually, from Indonesia, perspective, one is we really have commitment to this net zero roadmap by 2060. So decarbonization is really the focus of the government, as well as us as the the key player in the ecosystem. PLN, for those of you who have not known us that much, we have served the country of 273 million people, and we have around 85 million customers as of now. And with this energy transitions, we have a challenge that is similar to the South African case, that we have a coal of more than 50% installed capacity, and production is around 60%. But we do have a solid plan to do in terms of what are the action plans in terms of the technology adoptions down the road, in terms of also framework that we need to be prepared in PLN itself, and along that side, also the government perspective on what other policies are being needed for enabling the energy transitions. The challenge, I think, so far, I think is similar to some other countries as well. Regulatory framework is really the key, ensuring that everyone in the ecosystem also understand the situations, and most important is really how the cost of energy transition would be paid up, who's gonna take care of that, and how the mechanism of it. And Indonesian government has already engaged with various stakeholders in the global platform, in various countries, and also help from the multilateral agency. We do have the energy, country platform for energy transitions, and we have been in discussions also on the various fiscal support that is needed for enabling these energy transitions. On the other part, on the technical aspect, I think similar to other countries as well, we need to ensure that the energy security is also key. The challenge on balancing the energy transitions with the CO2 reductions with the energy security, as we know that Indonesian economy grows, with the support of electricity of more than 5%. The electricity itself now is growing at the rate of more around 7%, and we still have some more jobs to electrify the country, although it's already 99.5%, but we still have the challenge to electrify the whole country to the 100%. So I think that's on the technical perspective, and I think the most interesting part is really the carbon trading or carbon market framework and incentive. There is, I think we all understand that like for example, the early retirement of the coal power plants currently is not considered as a green. It's not considered as the energy transition effort. So currently in regional market, the only category of initiatives that can be accommodated is green nature-based solution. So I think from industry, the regulatory, from the regulator of the industry, there's a challenge of the taxonomy of the energy transitions, and I think it's not one binary 1 to 0, green to black or brown to green, but there is a certain period of energy transition which is gray into that everyone in the ecosystem should understand that the transition period needs to be accommodated. We have already engaged with many financiers and investors that all the stakeholders, lenders, and investors expect that everyone needs to have their decarbonization roadmap, their initiatives, but everyone also care that those assets would not be in their balance sheet. So they want to dispose those brown assets as soon as possible. But I think with a country, developing country like us, we need a certain time of transition because it's not like a very, very short term and 1-0 situation. So during the period of energy transition, the taxonomy and the regulatory requirements from the financial market, for example, from various regulators need to also be, come into a certain agreement. So I think that's probably some of the challenge that we have. Currently, despite all the challenge, I think PLN has already, I can say that we are progressing. With the situations of a bit of challenge in the commitment that we have made for the power purchase agreement for coal power plants, which is under construction and already in operations. We have been able to postpone the decommissioning, rescheduling, adjust the availability factor and capacity factor, the take-or-pay requirements, and some, one of, few PPAs have already been cancelled with, amicable solutions. So I think from that we have already been successful, but we keep on continuing to do that. On the other hand, we do also co-firing of our power plants, and we are now pushing also changing and replacing our coal power plants with renewable energy. And we have stopped installing a new coal-fired power plants. Then we also plan to install more renewable energy in our long-term electricity development plan. So I think that's probably the situations. Overall, we are tackling all the building blocks in energy transitions, but we do need support from various institutions, understanding from the lenders, investors, and I think the multilateral development agency or development finance institutions needs to also support and come into one consensus and taxonomy to help countries like us to have a just and fair, reasonable energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Indeed, in between the South African and the Indonesian case, we hear at the same time two utilities having the same reflections and thinking, and at the same time very different situation at first with different fleets of assets, and so the two will have different financial answers as well to the same question, which is very interesting. Benoit, your turn to explain to us how we can finance this long-term decarbonization strategies and the various mechanisms that we can try to implement and support in this matter. Please, Benoit. And sorry, I will ask you to only for a few minutes, so that we can try not to end up too late. Sorry for that.
No worries, I'll do my best. Can you hear me?
We can, very well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do my best and try to talk for a couple of minutes. Okay, just to make a long story short, I'm not going to talk about governance issues and relationships between state-owned entities and governments. What I'm going to try to do is take a step back and see how national governments can support SOEs by elaborating what I would call a public business plan, a public finance plan for the transition. Basically, the key question we have before us is how can countries move from national decarbonization strategies, such as the ones that will be presented, for example, and move towards a low-carbon resilient economy, basically how to implement strategy and make sure that national economies actually decarbonize. So my key message here is governments need to walk the talk and elaborate what I would call a public finance, a public business plan for the transition. It's much more than policies and financial incentives. Of course, it will encompass policies and financial incentives, but at the end of the day, we need to talk about investments, we need to talk about public action, and we need to talk about macroeconomic implications. So first of all, talking about investments, what national governments need to do, and that is basically much needed to support SOEs and other entities, and I would say private entities, is first assess current low-carbon investments in the economy. That's, I could possibly spend many more minutes on that, but basically this is something we've been doing in France for the past 10 years, assessing low-carbon investments. What are the low-carbon investments today in the national economy? Where do they occur? Which sector? How are they financed? That is paramount to understand how the green economy is being financed. Second, once the step has been completed, what needs to be done is to assess investment needs and investment gaps. Investment needs based on the long-term strategy of the country. How much money, how much private and public capital is going to be needed to roll out the needed investments to implement the low-carbon strategy, the LTS, or NDC, and then depending on the time horizon. And once you've done that, basically you can assess the investment gap. How much capital is needed to be unlocked in the long term and the medium term by the country. And then you can move on to the public action side. What are the implications for the national budget? The bad piece of news is if you want to roll out public and private investments, you will need public money. You will of course need public money for public investments, but you will also need public money for rolling out private investments to provide incentives, subsidies, etc. So you will need public spending in all cases. And even if you, like for example, if you want people to refurbish their houses, you will need public money to help them out. If you want people to leave thermal engines and use electric vehicles or bikes or whatever, you will need to roll out public subsidies, public investment to do that. And the last bit of the public action you will need to look at, apart from public spending, is which revenues can be mobilized. So that's where you will talk about tax revenues, different sustainable finance instruments, reform of fossil fuel subsidies, which is one way to mobilize capital as well. And in this stream, you will look at carbon pricing instruments, for example. And my the last message, is it okay, Mathilde, in terms of time? I mean, I have 2 more minutes. It's okay. I'll take it as a yes.
Not more than 2. Maybe 1, Benoit.
Okay, 1. Okay. The last bit is do not overlook macroeconomic implications. The transition will have massive implications in macroeconomic terms, so don't overlook it. My last key message, and that will wrap up my presentation, we usually summarize this by saying that governments can help SOEs and other private entities by rolling out the 5 Ps. The public finance plan for the transition can be summarized in 5 words that start with a P. Pilot, you need a pilot. We usually like to see the Prime Minister as being the pilot. Second, project. Long-term objectives with intermediary milestones. Let's call it a long-term strategy, a low-carbon development plan, etc., whatever you want. Third, plan, public action strategy to achieve this objective. That's basically, I mean, that's the strategy in itself. Fourth, public finance programming. You need public finance to roll out the strategy. If you miss out this bit, the plan will never be rolled out. And fifth and last, preparedness and foresight. You basically need to manage the implications of the transition and to avoid setbacks due to crises. In the event that we have sanitary crises, energy crises, etc., things which never occur but need to be factored into the programming process of the public finance. I'm done with my bit. That's basically my take. How can governments can help SOEs by governance for one thing, but also by developing and rolling out this public business plan for the transition, which will allow SOEs to roll out their own public finance, business plan for the transition and contribute to the national targets.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Benoit. Ahead, you will have the concluding remarks, I believe, because as we are slightly late, and you deserve it, as you organized it all. Benoit talked a lot about public finance. You've been working on public-private partnership, so looking forward also to hear your views and the AFD's views on this question.
Okay, I think for the sake of time, I'm going to be very brief. Most has been said already by Benoit. I think in a nutshell, to direct financing towards private investments, it is essential that governments plan the national economic transition. Only they can do it. And it is essential that they create the conducive environment by putting in place the adequate policies, incentives, public policies. All that is part of the planning. And I think we also need the scale up of public concessional investments alongside private investments. And I will add that in addition to achieve scale, it is absolutely necessary to standardize the green impact measurement methodologies to structure this new class of assets. So I think here, I believe that public development banks are key players. And I would just add one more thing. I think we need to go beyond just the mere financial engineering of blending funds, concessional funds, and funds at market conditions. I think we need to build a partnership between the public authorities and the private investors. That involves sometimes putting in place innovative public-private governance structures. We did that as an example with a pilot climate fund in China, in which we had 2 fund managers to represent both the public and the private interests, because we had the fundings of the public sector and of the private sector. And I think this special governance allows the public authority to dialogue with and understand the private investors' requirements. It allows them to also fine-tune the need for grants and concessional funds, while at the same time bringing in the needed overall guidance in terms of priority investments. So that's it. I'm going to stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very concise. And just to highlight the fact that indeed at AFD we acknowledge and we really see that our clients, SOEs, but not only, we need to work with them at what it means for them to be aligned with the Paris Agreement. So we have started the discussion on the energy sector because, of course, it's key in terms of emission. We also have started the discussion on financial intermediation. We've just launched a 4-pager which explains where we stand on the discussion. All this needs qualitative, quantitative assessment, country ownership, and you started with this, Henri, and it's Henry. Henry, I call you Henry. And this is, of course, I shouldn't make joke because after I forget what I want to say. So this is country ownership is really critical, and I think indeed as DFI we must make sure we coordinate properly with the rest of the community of the DFI, and the only way is to do it through this ownership, because we can try to coordinate, but the only way we can really properly coordinate if US come, UPLN, the South African do the coordination and really say, okay, this is our plan. We have you benchmarking that, yes, it fits with the 1.5 target, and then money should flow with less conditionalities based on this assessment. Thank you very much for this session. Sorry for the difficulties. It was not so easy to start. Also on my side doing the moderation, but I'm really glad that we managed to have this discussion together. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Nahir. Benoit, thanks.